Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to the Eternal set review for Dark Frontier with part 4 of the Shadow cards and the remaining few cards, as well as the top 5 Shadow cards as usual at the end of each color. Before we move on to the cards, you know it, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification icon for more if you haven't yet. Alright, so first we have Tasbu the Forbidden. This is the Shadow quintuple influence 5-drop. He's kind of like middle of the pack, sort of. 5 cost 6/6 is pretty good stats. The deadly is kind of redundant on it, because yeah, sure, there is like the occasional World Bearer Behemoth that nobody plays anymore, where that would matter, for example. So most of the time it just is a vanilla 6/6. But we still have the Warp, and when one of your other units dies, you draw a card and take 1 damage, giving you some nice grind potential. Once again, problem is a bit that the only deck that I can think of that would be this shadow heavy potentially is Stone Scar, but it doesn't want to be this shadow heavy because it still has Flame Blast. And it also has like more fitting options on 5. You usually want a charger that has immediate impact rather than Tasbu, I think. So Tasbu is kind of in this awkward spot again where he doesn't really have a home, I think, at least for now. What's a card to keep in mind when building, because it does something fairly unique and powerful that your deck might want if it can support him. In Limited, once again, these quintuple influence cards are pretty hard to support. Next we have Unspeakable Torment. Yeah, that card is super weird and pretty unplayable, I think, in both formats. At the start of your turn, you sacrifice Unspeakable Torment to deal 3 damage to yourself, and then deal your health in damage to the enemy player. So unless you have a lot of health gain and have a pretty high health, this is not gonna do a whole lot of damage to your opponent and might just kill you in the process. This card is super awkward. Next we have Wretched Talon, 5 cost, 3/3 relic weapon, and on Onslaught you get a 1/1 Deadly Spider. So not a constructed card, but in Limited this is a pretty powerful relic weapon all in all, I would say. Like the 1/1 Deadly really sells it. Then we have Hostile Takeover. For 6 you steal an enemy unit that has 4 or less attack. It's a bit expensive and a bit conditional, but kind of borderline interesting. Who knows, maybe the card could make it into some markets in very specific meta games, but it's still quite expensive for what it does and kind of situational. It doesn't steal that many good things these days. In Limited, however, it's pretty strong, so in Limited this is a bomb. Next we have Hunting Anura. It's a 6 cost 4/4 flying. Pretty good Limited 6-drop. Great actually. In Constructed this is too weak. It has Warp if you or any of your units attack this turn, so it basically has like Onslaught Warp, which makes it even better. So this is a really powerful uncommon in Limited. Next we have Inevitable Horror, another like more Limited only card really, but in Limited it's obviously super powerful. A 6 cost 5/5 flyer alone is great in Limited, and kill each shifted unit is something that situationally comes up in Limited as well to gain you additional value. So quite a bomb, but it's a legendary, so that's kind of what you expect. Then we have Vara's Sanctum. While you have exactly 1 unit, it has +3 attack and deadly and lifesteal, so this has some nice synergies with cards like Harbinger clearing the whole board, or like with Golem Press creating like a 4/1 deadly lifesteal double damage unit each turn and stuff like that. But these are more like cute interactions really than things that are realistically going to make it into Constructed usually. Maybe it is with a market slot in something like a Felon deck. In Limited, I think it's even harder to meet this criteria, making it even more awkward. Of course, if you have it enabled, it's pretty strong. Then we have Winnow, 6 cost, Warp, enemy units get -1/-1. The fact that it's permanent is nice. It's still not that great, I think, since it's pretty expensive, but it seems fine as a one-off in Limited to me. And last but not least, for the Shadow cards, we have Direwood Lurker, a 7 cost 4/5 lifesteal, which is pretty overcosted if you ask me, and then the Shift 6 doesn't really make it much better, so even in Limited I think this is pretty bad. I quickly want to talk about the non shadow cards here in the process. So yeah, let's take a look and wait a moment. All right, and talk about these before we look at the top 5 shadow cards. So yeah, the new smugglers. This one is pretty good. It's not that great, like the charge doesn't match as well with the stats. The stats make it a better blocker, so there's a bit of tension there, but all in all it's pretty solid for a smuggler. This is the weirdest one because it's basically just a 3-cost 3-2, which is pretty underwhelming and like straight up worse than X2 Merchant in terms of the unit itself. So you're gonna need good reasons to like play this over X2 Merchant, for example. Next we have Pearl Abbey Smuggler. This card is amazing. I mean, I would put this in decks potentially without this. Like if this was like, I don't know, a 2-2 and wasn't a smuggler, it would probably still make the decks it would make as a smuggler. So this is possibly the best smuggler right now, or one of the best smugglers. The main thing is finding a deck to fit this. The obvious thing is it goes well with Alessi, but then what else do you do, and is there even a viable Alessi deck is the big question. But just as a card, this card is amazing. Next we have Rhyme Conclave Smuggler, basically a slightly weaker version of the pre-nerf Yennev Merchant. We all know how good that was, and this also gives you a face Aegis if you enable it, so another premium smuggler, and lined up as one of the best smugglers in the game together with the Pearl Abbey Smuggler. And last but not least we have Blight Pass Smuggler. This is more middle of the pack as smugglers go, I would say. The Berserk is a bit weird because it doesn't do a whole lot with the stats, but 1-4 is really nice defensive stats, so for a more slow mid-range or controlling Feln deck, this is a great 3-drop that holds off a lot of stuff in the same vein as like Aurelian Merchant. It's still a bit worse than Aurelian Merchant, obviously, especially pre-nerf Aurelian Merchant, but it is all in all a pretty solid, more defensive smuggler. Then we have the insignias, which don't really need any discussion and are obviously very good. And then we'll talk about the 3 factionless cards. Seal of Devotion, warp while you have no more than one type of influence, is still kind of a trap, because if you mono faction, you're almost certainly gonna play the quintuple influence guys, and then if you warp this, you're just gonna push that by a turn, so it's pretty bad. This card is just a pretty big miss. I think the card should give you influence of the one influence your deck is running, so you could actually play it and it would actually give you a payoff for being mono faction, which is what this card is meant to be. I think the card is a design failure, honestly. Next we have Even-Handed Golem. This card's pretty cool and a lot of fun. There's Haunting Scream, Dread, Last Chance to recure it, for example, to get more uses out of it, making it better than typical card draw spell. But I still think like what you get from the card is not that good compared to what you sacrifice. You sacrifice a market, you sacrifice cheap interaction, some of the best interaction like Torch, Defiance and that sort of stuff. And the biggest problem is basically structurally. If your deck is only even cards, the first time you can do 2 things in a turn is turn 4, while if you have an odd deck, the first thing you can do 2 things in a turn is on turn 2. And you can always kind of like fill out your turns by using like 1-cost spells, which is great to catch up or pull ahead even. So these are like notoriously tempo inefficient. You will on odd turns always waste 1 power, so you will never be power efficient. So the cost, I feel like, is in the end a bit too big. There's some mitigation there, skipping like your turn 3 by using ramp on 2, using some of your off turns for depleted power like crests to get value out of this, and so on. Like, it's gonna be decent, but I have a hard time seeing a golem deck being a tier 1 deck given the structural issues that I just outlined. And last but not least, we have Seek Answers. You choose a power or non-power and then draw a random card of that type from your deck. Yeah, well, the fact that it is random and costs 2 just makes this not really playable in Constructed, if you ask me. In Limited, I guess it's okay. It's kind of whatever you need. if your deck can afford to spend 2 power on doing that. But even there, you probably have some junk that you really don't want to draw into, and then you spend 2 power into like to turn it into junk, which is pretty meh. Alright, so time to talk about the top 5 Shadow cards to round things out. Alright, Shadow really didn't get a whole lot in this set. It's even worse than Primal in a way, I think. So first we have Null Blade, which is a nice tool, nothing super great, I think, but a solid addition to Shadow's toolkit, if you're Shadow heavy enough to support it. Then we have Tasbu, which, as I already said, is technically kind of powerful, like they all are, but doesn't really have a place right now. Auric Reclaimer already is pretty fringe, but is a really cool, powerful build-around type thing that so far hasn't really panned out to deliver like a competitive deck, aside from just some fun. Remembrance is a really nice and powerful tool that will be viable long-term one-cost spells that allow you to cheat on power and reuse things, and the synergies with Reclaimer and other shift cards are making this card being like noteworthy of a fairly thin top 5 here. And yeah, as you can see, the top 5 also includes Razor Quill for the combo potential in Constructed with Kadra, and then Stained Honor as an honorable mention, because Kadra and Razor Quill without Honor is still pretty good, and you don't have to have like a bad 2-cost 1/3, and Stained Honor is mainly only there for the cases where you just want to go like kill you that turn with the combo, and not that great of a card. So I figured I'll put it as an honorable mention, because it's kind of the potential third piece to the Razor Quill Kadra puzzle. Alright, that wraps up the whole set review. I'll try and rethink how I put these out in the future to get them out better. Still open for feedback and suggestions on that. I'm reading all of it and taking it into consideration, so fire away. And yeah, until then, if you enjoy the content, hit the like button, share it with your friends, leave a comment, subscribe for more, and please consider whitelisting EternalTitans.com and YouTube on your ad block, and check out the ads at the beginning and end of the videos to help support the free content. That's it for this time. I'm your host ManuS. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.